Absolutely. Got it.
Hi, and welcome to the Rise podcast. My name is Katie Oman, and I am here to interview some truly inspirational, phenomenal, kick-ass women who are going to tell us their amazing stories and really give us a big boost of inspiration today, because Lord knows we all need it. Today, my guest is the absolutely wonderful Debi Richens, and I'm so blessed and happy that she's agreed to have this conversation with me today. So, hi, Debi. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Hi, Katie. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's wonderful. And I love your motif because my whole thing is about rise, obviously. And so the actual motif of this podcast is the Phoenix. So I actually this feels very synchronistic. So I think this is going to be a very good chat. But tell me a bit about you. So, who are you? What do you do? All that good stuff.
Okay, so my name is Debi Richens. I'm known as the Soul Phoenix or the Soul Strategist. And it has arisen from various experiences in my life that have led to deep grief, deep trauma, and lots of loss that hadn't truly been understood until I actually did the journey of understanding the depths of grief and what it truly was.
Yeah.
For so many years, I'd been told by GPs that I was depressed and I needed pills.
Mm.
I knew I wasn't depressed, but I didn't know what I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't truly understand. And then I met a lovely lady at networking, business networking, when I had a former business, and she was talking about a book that she taught from. And as I looked at the back of the cover of the book, it was a little bit like that flashbulb moment, I really got it.
Mm.
And in that moment, I couldn't do anything about it. I didn't earn any money from my business because everything I had, I put back into it.
Yeah.
I cared for a disabled mum-in-law who had mixed dementia, and I lived on carer's allowance. So I literally lived on pennies.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I suddenly realized the layers of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I promised myself that I would do something about it.
Yeah.
It took me some years. And then I approached Sue again and I said to her, well, I'd really like to do this. And then I'd really like to go on and do the training. And she looked at me and she said, that's going to cost you double. You might as well go and just do the training because you'll do the work. In that few days, you'll do it at speed, but you'll do the work. And it changed my world. It changed everything for me in that moment. So much so that I started to sleep properly for the first time in my life. And that for me was an amazing turnaround. I'd always spent my life catnapping. I'd never had a proper night's sleep.
Yeah.
And I began to understand that it came from childhood trauma. That's really where my journey began.
God, that's powerful stuff. I mean, I love people who really have a very personal connection and story to what they do. Like, it's not just there's nothing wrong for people. I'm not saying that everybody has to have that kind of level of, it's happened to me and so, but there is something magical, I think. And I know that from my own work that I do, of turning your pain into positivity and healing, both yourself and other people. And I really know that through healing and helping others, we're always healing and helping ourselves. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. And I can really see how much you're passionate about what you do. It's like you've got a real deep soul connection to the work.
Very much. It was really fueled by living at the time with not just caring for my mum-in-law, but also my mum, who was several miles away from where I am. And her health had been up and down since I was a child. So I'd always cared for her in one way or another. And I was constantly, 3 hours apart between the two of them doing and caring and doing my business and doing life. And at the same time, I was living with post-divorce abuse. But it wasn't just from the ex-husband. it was actually from my only child as well,
Right.
as a young adult who didn't truly understand the experience she'd had
Yeah.
to that point, because I didn't either.
Mm.
And I didn't understand all the things that were going on. And so actually, it was his now ex-wife who contacted me and said, I'm beginning to understand what you experienced,
Yeah.
because I'm now experiencing this through my divorce from him.
Mm.
And she told me so many things in that 2 hours that opened my mind up to what the abuse was,
Yeah.
and where it was coming from, and who it was being fueled by, and why certain things had happened that I could just not put my finger on. And no matter how I tried to theorize it and work it out, I just couldn't, until she told me about
Yeah.
the other people that were there,
Mm.
about the things that were being said. And until she'd realized that the person they told her I was a complete figment of their imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was back in 2016, and I did my grief training in 2019. So
Right.
between 2016 and 2019, I was starting to unravel some of the stuff, but I still didn't understand it.
Yeah.
When I did my grief training in 2019, and I actually sat and I wrote my emotions down, and I wrote my feelings and my thoughts down, and I put them in an order, it started to make sense as to why I was reacting.
Yeah.
I don't react anymore, because I know now it was all about the unconscious mind and how powerfully that
Oh,
works and how it
absolutely.
drives us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
It's
yeah.
it's fascinating. It's so fascinating. I'm just so happy that you were able to, get the help that you need. It felt very synchronistic and divine timing. It's like it came to you at a really pivotal point in your life. And the fact that you're now able to, like you say, to help other people through your own experiences is just beautiful. Which leads me on to my next question, really. So what is it that you really love about what you do? And what are some of the challenges that you're facing at the moment?
So what I love about what I do is when I see my clients have their light bulb moments,
Yeah.
when I see them understand that actually sometimes the trauma isn't theirs, and we look at that through hypnotherapy and through timeline tools, because our unconscious mind knows exactly the truth of where these things started. So
Yes.
those tools allow me to help my clients to go back to a safe place and actually unravel that for themselves.
Mm.
It's not me doing the work, it's me doing the guidance.
Yeah,
It's me
absolutely.
holding their hand while they go through that process of their mind, allowing them to see.
Yes,
And when they
absolutely.
realize that it's generational trauma and nothing to do with them at all, it's such a big leap. It's such a big learning.
Mm.
But it also allows you to let go of so much baggage.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
powerful.
Yeah,
And when I
absolutely.
see them then go on and achieve and achieve and achieve and rise in their own businesses and their own lives, it's just so heartwarming to know
Mm.
that I was able to help them to unlock those little things in the way that I have done previously myself.
Yeah.
And it's just very exciting and thrilling to see that.
Mm.
And I think the biggest challenge is getting people to understand that actually their unconscious mind, their subconscious mind, is this powerful supercomputer that collects everything they experience, whether it's by sight, sound, smell, touch, sensation. Everything is collected through all of our senses, whether we're aware of it or not. And
Yes.
it's those things that impact us later on down the line.
Mm.
And no matter how much we try and bury the big thing that we're ashamed of and we're guilted by and we're fearful of, actually, it's far better to bring it out and play with it and let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I've done a lot of helping people with shadow work at the moment. And it is with kind of the same field, obviously. And it is once you start to tap into that space and really look at what's there and why, and start to kind of shine a light on it, it's like deep healing. Like I always say this, it's like, because I've been on the spiritual field for like 13 years at this point, and it's for a long time I think I was in the shallow end of the pool. So it was all, you know, the love and light, and there's nothing wrong with love and light, there really isn't. But after a while, it's like you want something, your soul is crying out for something deeper, something that's more sustainable. And so that's when you realize at some point you have to go down and in. That's where the true healing really starts, you know. And so when people start to, like you say, it's magic, it's wonderful. And once you realize that, it just changes everything, changes the game completely.
It hugely does, you know, and it leads on to other things. You know, people have big misunderstandings because I have lived a very unusual life, you know, and that's not me waving a big flag and saying, look at me, aren't I amazing? It's actually me having had massive understandings and realizations about why I was like I was as a teenager, why I was like I was as a young woman, why I found myself in situations where I was terrified of saying, I don't like this. I don't want to be here. And it's really in the last few years of doing my NLP work and the hypnotherapy and the timeline work that it's allowed me to see those deeper layers and to truly understand, you know, that I'm never going to stop doing that. But power is in having my voice and speaking.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you.
It's allowed other people to feel safe. Their hand up and say, me too.
Exactly.
You know, and that's so powerful. And, you know, I live of alienation and estrangement. I am alienated from my only child, who's now fully estranged, and she alienates me and her children. So, you know, there is not that normal familial construct in my life that most people take for granted. But actually, the deeper I've gone into this, the deeper I've looked, the deeper I've learned, the deeper I've spoken to experts, and the deeper I've read, it affects over a quarter of the population of the world.
Absolutely. Phenomenal.
It's a huge, damaging societal virus that is, it destroys every layer. But the trouble is, because people are stuck in their own fear and their own grief and their own terror and their own doubt, they're too afraid to put their hand up and explore deeper, and actually also to take responsibility for their part in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is incredibly powerful as well. It's not about shame and judgment and blame. It's to say that, look, we're not perfect. We're human beings and we make mistakes. And actually, if you can have accountability for that, then it's a deeper level. It's like, I actually see it as emotional maturity. If you can hold your hands up and say, look, it's not all my fault, but at the same time, I did play a part in this. And what can I learn from that situation? How can I take that and use it in a positive way so that I can grow from that, you know? And one of those, once we start to explore that space, then it's incredibly powerful, I feel.
Hugely, you know, and taking responsibility for the inward emotions for me was the biggest, most powerful change. It had always been in the past, and it was how I was, you know, how I was supported in growing up. It wasn't always my fault. It was often someone else's fault. But actually, that someone else was my internal engine, my internal voice, and it was driving everything. And I didn't understand that internal voice. And so as I started to turn it over and unravel it and look at it and look at its imperfections and look at its hurt and its pain and its sadness, that's when I stepped into who I really am.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. So it's an interesting question next, because I think I've kind of covered, I was going to ask you about what people misunderstand you, but I think we've kind of covered that in what we've spoken about already. So what has been your biggest failure to date, and what did it teach you? And I always say that word with air quotes because I actually don't really believe that it's as detrimental as people think. So what has been your biggest maybe lesson, and what did it teach you?
Failure is actually one of the biggest places of growth, because it isn't failure, it's learning.
Yeah.
It's learning, it's understanding the depth of who you are. And that for me was actually going through the divorce, going through those early stages and placing faith in people who I thought in my heart I trusted, and in my head I trusted, but actually my insides were in turmoil telling me, you can't do that, you can't do that, but I didn't see it. And also trusting in the establishment was another one, because the establishment has its own agenda.
Yeah.
And its own agenda isn't about making sure that you become a productive part of the human race. Its own agenda is actually to keep you in a very quiet little place, you know, drugged up, quiet, not making a sound. When actually I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to know why. I was asking questions and I wasn't getting answers. And I was feeling more and more pushed back into a box. And along with divorce trauma, I was in a very, very damaged state. And so out came the anger, because I didn't understand what the anger was. Out came the words, and I didn't understand what was forcing those words. And I stepped into a place of a broken, wounded animal. And I didn't see it. I didn't understand it because I was so deeply in it. But that I have just taken steps forward each time, sometimes so painful and not really understanding why. But each step has led me to the next level and the next level and the next level. And it's taken time. But I'm so grateful for the time, because the learning has been so powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Dear listener and dear Debbie, this is a real life podcast. I have twin children who have their friends over in the living room, and there's a lot of background noise. So I'm just going to hold there, Debbie. Real life podcast with real life situations. I'll give you 2 seconds. I will be back. Seriously, don't say. Really annoying me. Children. Anyway, moving forward, that shows just how real life this is, because that's the nature of families. Anyway, let's carry on. So, if you could be remembered for one thing, as we leave this mortal coil, what would you like it to be?
Really my compassion for others, my love and care for others, because I never understood what that driver was. I've had it ever since I was a child. It's always been there, but it didn't really come out until I was in my adult life. It didn't truly become clear to me why I was like I am until I started this journey of understanding grief. And one of the things I understood about that was that the more the experiences you've had, the more you can really integrate and be empathetic with others, because you almost physically feel in their words what they're saying. And so you can really resonate. And for me, where my compassion becomes its biggest gift.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Somebody who is empathetic and highly sensitive, I think these attributes and these gifts have been seen as lesser in society, but actually emotional intelligence and emotional compassion and strength are some of the most powerful gifts that we can hold, so that we really connect and resonate with our fellow human beings. And I think once that's recognized and really seen as the powerhouse that it is, I think that it really shifts so much. And I think really could do some big shifts in society, to be honest with you.
Oh, hugely. I completely agree. when you hear the comment, oh, she's a nice girl, you know, she's just too nice for her own, and you just think, you have no idea actually is underneath niceness.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
know what determination and grit we have that powers us and keeps us going forward, but doesn't need to be used as an angry tool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'd say it is that learning and that teaching, but that's where people like you can come in and help people to reframe, I think. And it is all about that shifts in perspective and mindset so that people understand themselves at a deeper level, you know? So it's beautiful. So big question. If you had a DeLorean parked outside and could go back to your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
Would tell my 18-year-old self not to be so desperate to fall in with a person of the opposite sex and step into what they thought was the world that they should be stepping into. I would tell them to take that time to be free, take that time to find who they truly are. Take that time to learn how to love and nurture themselves and not just do the expectations of society.
Yeah, that hits really hard because I probably would say the same thing. You know, I think with the young girls are given this fairy tale-esque thing to reach for, that we're all supposed to want the man, the marriage and the children. And it becomes like, you know, even other adults are like, have you met someone yet? Are you dating someone yet? Are you settled down yet? And it's like, we should nurture our children to cultivate the relationship with themselves before we do anything else.
The things I've understood about that on this journey of learning is actually my mother was an amazing woman, but she could not do that for me because she had never learned how to do it for herself.
Yeah.
And in the last few weeks before she died, when she told me certain things about how I came into the world, I suddenly understood that she had literally lived a life of fear and pain from the moment of my inception. And that she carried that around, but she never shared it with me because she didn't want it to colour my life.
Yeah.
But she didn't know how to show me how to truly nurture who I was.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know how to do it for herself.
Yeah, that's
because
the thing.
she's in a place of fear and pain and emotion that was so distressing and painful to her, in deep grief. And again, she didn't know how to articulate it. So I never learned that. I just learned that you had to be strong and that you had to keep an exterior and that you had to keep doing things. And that thing about finding a man and settling down, for me at 20 years old, when I met the ex-husband, was escape from a damaged family, from a damaged collection of things that were happening around me that I just felt so tied to but couldn't escape from. So finding somebody who I'd finally said, oh, actually, I could marry this person and I could have children with this person, when before it was, I'm not having children, I don't want children, was a really powerful change for me.
Yeah.
But what I didn't see was that my unconscious mind, my internal workings were saying, step out of one fire into another. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
As I've learned to sit and understand all the traumas of all those years, I've seen the journey now. I've seen the links where one falls into the other and falls into the other. And I followed the laws of society because I didn't know how to follow my heart. I didn't know how to follow my soul because I didn't know them.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, we could really live in a place where we give our power away to externals constantly and think that other people know better than we do. And yet there is this like well of wisdom and truth deep down in your gut, deep down in your intuition. If you're able to learn how to connect to that, that could be like your North Star. That is your rudder. That is your compass. It will lead you the right way, but it takes some work to connect to that and listen to that and learn how to, because again, we're not taught.
Exactly that. Exactly that. And I've been in so many situations where afterwards I've spent the whole time with that little voice in my head, my little AD talking at me, telling me, you shouldn't have done that. Why did you put yourself in that position? Why did you say yes? Why did you allow that to happen? And constant remonstration, constant criticism, constant self-torture. Oh, well, you've done it now. You'll just have to live with it. Oh my. And it's this last couple of years for me, I have this little bookworm going on that's, trying to put things into order, but doesn't quite know how.
Yeah.
But it's all going to come out there.
Oh, for sure. I don't doubt that for a second, Debbie. You were really on a very different path than you were. And I know that it's going to be one that you continue on for the rest of your life. So it's very inspiring to see, genuinely. In that vein of influential, inspiring people, who are the 3 most inspirational people on your journey thus far? Anybody who really has, inspired or you found very influential in your life?
So really the first one was my mother. The person who my whole childhood was very, very sick, and then accidentally got a job on the railway. She went with her friend to support her friend at interview. And it was in the 70s, in the days when they did unions and all that sort of stuff, block interviews. And somebody didn't turn up, and she was sat in the waiting room in her slacks and t-shirt, hair down. It was a summer's day. She wasn't really worried. She was waiting for her friend. Would you mind stepping in to help us? We're one person short, but we've got such great candidates we don't want to cancel. So she stepped in. Then she got the job. And amazingly, she and her friend stayed friends until they died, but she was very upset with Mum. But my mum became station announcer at Reading Station. And that was amazing, and it was an amazing world for me to have a few years of in my life. And I learned a lot about a different way of life because of shift suddenly coming into our lives and all of these things. But then she went on to do the first Rail Air Link hostess for the buses. So, she did that, and then she was training people, and it was like, wow, that's another step up, didn't know she could do things like that. And there she was doing this step up. Then she became First Lady Undermaster at Swindon.
Right.
So she was, when the big boss wasn't there, she was the one in charge.
Yeah.
She bought her first house. She had driving lessons. She was terrified of driving. She never drove because she had ear problems, but she had driving lessons because she had to be able to drive because of working on the railway. And so she did loads and loads of firsts. And every time she did it with such aplomb and such grace. And I just watched her and thought, she's achieving things we never thought she would.
Yeah.
And then she became First Lady Station Master at Gloucester. And that was so powerful, because she had literally risen through these ranks, through very severe illnesses to very severe journeys with cancer and major surgery that could have just stopped her in her tracks, but it didn't. As soon as she was able to get back on that, she was back on that, and she was there. And she did it with that grace and style that, I can't begin to explain. It was a lovely energy, beautiful energy. And then the other 2 people, actually, she had a wonderful friend that we grew up with, and she was one of the first people we met when we went to Reading when she left my father. And her name was the Countess Barbaria.
Wow.
And she was actually the ex-wife of the Count Barbaria. And she was a formidable 5'0" lady who bombed around in her dark mustard yellow Mini in the days when the Mini had a string inside and not a handle. So God help us if we dared to pull it, because if you broke it, you were in major trouble. So, you got in and out of the car very meekly and you didn't touch a thing. But she was such a loving, kind, supportive lady. And she and my mum had a great friendship.
Yeah.
And it showed me how being single didn't stop you living in the world, and it didn't stop you achieving and being a powerful entity in your own right.
That's beautiful. And it's so important to have people like that around you. You know, it's important, all different types of women, of course, but to have a woman that's like inexcusably, unapologetically herself is, for a young girl, is just like, it's everything. I really think it's really important to lean into those people because they teach you so much.
Yes. I mean, to us, she was Auntie Cynthia, but but she was a lady with a title, and she her little diminutive 5 foot nothing, she stood very proudly in that, because she'd also had a difficult marriage, but she had to make sure that her daughter was well cared for and well supported, and she ensured that that happened. It's what I see from those two women is neither of them spent time belittling who our fathers were to our faces. They spent that time allowing us to have relationships. They might not have been the healthiest relationships. I've had so much learning about my own father over the years. But what they've allowed us is they've allowed us not to fall into that place of belittling another person or making the other person an enemy. And, this is what happened to me. I was made to be an enemy when I'm not. So it was a very different experience for me going through the divorce, because I thought it was going to be the same. I didn't think that it was going to be this awful, ugly, horrible soup of words and mini war that was waged against me, because that wasn't what I'd experienced as a child. No matter my mother's misgivings and no matter the other adults around us at those times, they didn't make us have this hate or have distrust in who our other parent was.
No, I hear you. It is difficult. Absolutely. Who was the third person that inspired you? So we did two. We did the Baroness and we did your mum. Who was the third one?
It was a girl called Amanda that I was at primary school with. And she had been damaged by thalidomide. So she had a little arm to her elbow and a little hand on the end of her arm, but she never allowed it to stop her. She got into all kinds of things and she was very responsible, and her mother had died young, so she was always helping Daddy with the other children in the family. And she just inspired me to see that there was more in the world, and not to let anything hold you back.
That's beautiful. Love that. Thank you. So if you had to write a book about any topic tomorrow, what would you pick and why?
Well, it's so funny you asked that, because I'm actually just on the cusp of putting all those words out onto a bit of paper in an anthology that I'm joining. And the anthology is about trauma and how we grow from it. And actually, I'm going to be really honest about sexual trauma in a way that I never have before. Experiences I've had myself that it's only in these last few years I've truly understood why. And why I was so vulnerable. And how I've changed that vulnerability and stopped blaming myself. Because that's a massive part of the journey. In the trauma we experience and how we live with other people in our world and how we hide ourselves away.
Absolutely. It sounds incredibly powerful, and I think that it's one of those topics, like you say, it's not fully spoken about or fully understood, and And so for people being brave and vulnerable enough to own their story, and I'm a huge advocate for that in the work that I do, is when you own your experiences and your story, you take away the shame that was never yours to begin with. And I think that understanding that from this topic and this perspective is immensely powerful to those who will read it and need to read those words. So bless you. I think it's, let me know. Give us, well, I'll give you a shout out when it's out, because I think it's definitely something that needs to be read.
Yeah, no, I will. I mean, the anthology is due to be really seriously dealt with in September, so it won't be long. It's all happening a lot faster than I anticipated, but actually it's really focused my mind into what the right subject is to start with.
Fantastic. God bless you. So, interesting question. What is the one question you thought or wished I'd ask you, and how would you have answered it?
Oh, what a conundrum.
I know, it's an interesting thing, because you're like, and I had the interview, the first podcast that went out yesterday, and she said, no, you said everything that needed to be said. You know, I believe that everything, you know, from a heart space, you'll say what you need to say. But it is sometimes people, you know, the work that they do, or, you know, the passions that they have, there is something maybe that's not been touched upon. If there's not, and you've said everything you wanted to say, that's fine. I think it's an interesting question, you know.
A really interesting question, and you know, your other interviewee is right. All of these questions that you've asked me today have brought out so much, and some of it that I've never spoken of before in the way that I've spoken, and that's so powerful. But also there's another side to me. There's the creative side that explores who I am on the end of a paintbrush, and shows people a different side of me and how I see other people. One of the things I learned a few years ago as a Christmas gift from, birthday gift from my partner, was portraiture painting.
Oh, beautiful.
And I was desperate to learn oils, and I'd chosen this wonderful lady that I knew, and he'd bought the voucher secretly, you know, and then gave it to me. And off I went to do my painting. She wouldn't let me do oils to begin with, because I had to master the portrait in acrylics, because that's what I was used to.
Yeah.
But that was powerful in itself. And then the next one I painted was oils, and it was a self-portrait. And I saw myself in a way I hadn't ever seen myself before. You know, and that's very powerful when you see yourself coming alive on a canvas. You know, all of a sudden there was an eye and the cheek and the nose and the lips. And I just stopped in my tracks, and I suddenly saw me. And then when I was fully completed, I just walked around with a very stupid grin on my face for a very long time, because I was just so amazed that I had that within me. And so, you know, I haven't managed to do many more since, but that's something I would love to spend more of my time doing.
Yeah, that sounds so beautiful and so powerful. I love that. Absolutely love that. So obviously this has been such a great conversation. I think that everyone watching this will have really important takeaways for their own lives and their own journeys. So how can people find out more about working with you and the kind of things that you offer? Do you have a website? Are you on social media? Give us all your details.
So I have a very, very ditzy little Google site at the moment. It's just the precursor to the website being launched. So it's just something to keep a web presence. I'm on Facebook, either as myself or on my business page. So Debi Richens, or Debi Richens, the Soul Phoenix. I'm on Instagram, again, Debi the Soul Phoenix. I'm on LinkedIn as myself, Debi Richens. And I am very happy for people to contact me in any way that they want, through Messenger, you know. They want to follow up and connect with me. If they just want to ask a question, I give a half-an-hour consultation. So, you know, I'm not right for everyone, and everyone's not right for me. And that's what that half-hour consultation is about. It's about getting a feel for what they really need to express, and knowing I'm the right person to coach and
Yeah.
mentor them through what it is they've experienced.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that for me, I think, is probably the most important thing. I am a very open book. I don't hide. And I know that it's one of the reasons why my daughter fully estranged, because I don't hide, because I speak from my heart about the experience, because I know that every time I speak, someone else says, I'm feeling brave enough to put my hand up as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is
And
it's amazing. Like, Debbie, honestly, you are just, and I knew, like, when I connected with you, I knew intuitively that you would have the most amazing story to tell. And I really just deeply thank you for being honest and vulnerable and authentic in this space. It's been so powerful. Genuinely, I see you and I just think you are truly a magnificent soul. So keep doing the work that you're doing, because it's so needed in the world. So just from my heart, thank you for today. I really, really appreciate it.
it's been my honour, Katie. Thank you. I've so appreciated the time with you.
Bless you. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I have done recording it. And thank you for watching. As Debbie said, if you want to reach out to her to, if anything in this podcast has triggered you or brought stuff up for you and you want to discuss it further, I know Debbie's very open to you messaging her. So please go and find her. I'll put all the links in the notes as well. So everyone watching, have the best day. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next podcast. Thank you so much again, Debbie. Take care, everybody.